Today is February the 18th. February 18th is the biggest holiday in Kenya that very few people know about it. You know, when these people took power, Kenyatta came, said Kenyatta Day. Moi came, Moi Day. Kwatenge, you're getting old, so don't think about Kwatenge Day. But we forget some days which are perhaps they are equally important, perhaps even better than what we have been thinking. Let's try to remember as much as possible on this greatest day of the country that has received the lowest recognition. On Monday, 18th February 1957, Dedan Kimathi Wachuri was hanged in Kimathi prison. I want to apologize to my viewers that some stories cannot be summarized. Some stories are just a lecture of itself. Just lose a few bundles, but you'll gain a lot. I get motivated when young people say that they have learned a lot of historical facts from me than their own history teachers. I want to say here that the greatest history teacher in Kenya was called Professor Bethwel Ogot. As we are recording this, Professor Bethwel Ogot has not been buried. But very few people know that Professor Bethwel Ogot, the best history teacher Kenya has ever produced, was a mathematician. I get encouraged by that because I never did history in school. I did history up to primary level. Secondary level, I was in Nairobi Technical. So those are some of the subjects we did not do because of the technical subjects and biology, history and biology. So we didn't do history and biology because we were doing technical subjects. But then as I was talking about Professor Bethel Ogot as being the best history teacher ever, and he was a mathematician, I believe I'm also a mathematician. How do you explain that in my O level, ordinary level, Form 4, I did maths, alternative S, and I also did additional maths. In my Form 5 and 6, I did the camp, Kenya Advanced Mathematics Project. So I'm a mathematician. I've never done history. So I'm like Professor Gott, isn't it? Now, many people have come to claim that they can pinpoint Dedan Kimathi Wachuri's grave in Kimathi. I would advise that we forget about his grave. Let us move on. From Monday, 18th February 1957 to Tuesday, 18th February 2025, that is 24,000 days, 24,837 days. Can you find a grave? I remember in Nakuru we had a fellow who used to disturb our cousins in the CID, and they decided to kill him. And then they buried him in Nakuru. Up to today, his body has. People come and say, I'm sure he was buried here. And they exhume all the three graves on all sides and find he was not there. These are things that we call body switch. Somebody is buried, a second team comes at midnight, replaces that body with another body. If it is, they exchange it with somebody of another gender. So when people come and say, you say there was a man here, but how comes it is a woman? Or you said it is a woman, how comes that the body we are finding is a man? So if we cannot find the Nakuru fellow whose case was in the mid 80s, from 80s to now, it's how many years? I think it is halfway. And then look at where you are staying. Look at where you are staying. It is only recently that we started cementing graves, isn't it? I know that because I know where my grandfather was buried, but nowadays I have to do some blind walking to reach where his grave is. Yes, my grandfather was buried in a known place in 19 around that time, around that time. But we cannot easily find his grave. What about this fellow who was by then? You know, barrio, whatever happens according to your treatment of the past, or your how the government happens. Uh, you could be a senior member of your political party, and if your political party is the ruling party or ruling coalition, you can get a state burial. But if it is the other party that had won the election and not yours, you'll just be given. So state burials and whatever are given according to your relationship with the government. Dedan Kimathi Washuri, when he died, he was considered a terrorist. So he was given the burial of a terrorist. Now, assuming that those people can pinpoint the place, forget about development. What makes you believe that there wasn't a body switch? I think I'd said that, but I'm emphasizing that it is quite possible for there to be a body switch. When we go back a bit, or we sidestep a bit, Mama Mukami, now deceased, and the late Kimathi's family, including Al Amin Kimathi, know that my father, Japheth Lando, was the crime records constable who typed the case file of Dedan Kimathi. In any police station, you'll find there is a very good, intelligent constable who is usually called crime records. That is the work my father did. Let's go to the time when Dedan Kimathi was arrested. The colonial authority had infiltrated Mau Mau and created a wedge between the two leaders. Stanley Madenge and Dedan Kimathi were not on talking terms. So Stanley Madenge in 1955 said, things are hot. I can no longer stay around. And he told the people around him, I am going to Ethiopia. That was in those days Ethiopia used to be called Abyssinia. I'm going to Abyssinia. That was 1955. The question is, did he go to Ethiopia? He just said, I'm going to Ethiopia. I'm going to Abyssinia. Just that. But my answer to this is that my mom used to use scrambled messages. Even when a Masai was not, no, even when a Mau Mau was crossing a road, they used to do a trick. Because when you are crossing a footpath and your footsteps are discovered, the security personnel will try to find out where you are coming from and where you are going. So they used to. Some people say that they used to wear the soles of their shoe used to be different, so that when is moving from left to right, and you come and check the footprint, you'd think that he's moving from the opposite direction. So in Mau Mau, those days, the last thing you tell anybody is telling somebody where you are going. So when he said he's going to Ethiopia, I think He wanted the government informers to say that he has gone to Ethiopia, and maybe he may have ended up in the opposite direction, say Tanzania. Or those days it used to be called Tanganyika. And because of the internal civil war, Dedan Kimathi decided to surrender. Gen Z may not know it, but we have some people who were there in 1992. Ford was going to take over, but the government used a system where Ford was divided into two, Ford Kenya and Ford Asili. And then they fought against each other more than they fought KANU. So Mamau also had that problem. The more the things change, the more they remain the same. If you have a very big, very strong body, the government will do that so that you turn against each other. Kimathi decided to surrender. He offered to surrender to two people. He decided to surrender to two people. One was a tribal police, and the other one was a home guard. Tribal police today, we call them administration police. They used to policy the tribe, but then later they became they started policing the administration officers, and hence nowadays they are called administration police. So there were two police officers he was surrendering to. One was a TP, Askarikanga, and the other one was a home guard. Home guards, today we call them reservists, KPR. Oh, they have even changed from KPR. They are now called NPR, National Police Service. Now, these reservists or home guards, Kikuyus, you may hear the Kikuyus talking of Twarena Gadi. Twarena Gadi. Gadi comes from the word guard, home guard. Home guard. So the TP, let me use the terminology that was used those days. The TP, who today is an AP, and a home guard, whom today we call NPR, are the one he approached. When Kimathi approached them and told them, yes, he shouted from far, said, Nenye Kimathi wa Washuri. So they knew who he was. When Kimathi approached them, he told them who he was and told them that he was offering himself to surrender. The home guard shot him. The home guard shot him. There are various theories as to what happened or as to why the home guard shot him. One of the theories is that the home guard was in panic, which, okay, for lack of a better example, suppose you are somewhere and then a person like Washushu Wanugu or even Osama bin Laden appears to you and say, Osama bin Laden have come to surrender. You'll panic. So there's one theory that he panicked and that is why he shot him. As a former cop, I know that. The other theory is that handing over, there was a price for getting Kimathi. Now, if you go and hand over Kimathi and say, he surrendered to me, I don't know whether you'll be given all the prizes you are supposed to get, or if they said the money was for somebody who would capture him. You didn't capture him. So the other theory is that handing over Kimathi as a surrenderer would not grant the two prizes, and the colonial government appears to initially have wanted to set him up with animals. What I'm trying to say is that they would not be granted prizes. Maybe there was 300 shillings to be given to the person who would whatever, and then they would go to claim for 300. I'm only giving an example of 300 shillings. I don't know how much it was. And then they would say, no, you'll not get the 300 because you did not capture him. He brought himself. And also, it appears that from the initial time, I didn't quietly interview my father. Japheth Lando was somebody who, when he wanted to talk, he would tell you. And when he stopped, you are supposed to ask a maximum of 3 questions. And you know, in NIS, the first 5 questions, the NIS fellow does not even remember. Usually, the first 5 questions are meant to produce an environment of friendship for you to be free to talk. So Japheth Lando would tell me what he would want to tell me, and I used to leave it and say maybe next time he'll fill in up. But from the pictures and whatever, Dedan Kimathi is somebody who came on his own violation, and when he came, he surrendered. But then they went and looked for some animal skin and said that they had arrested. Initially, they wanted to charge him with being a poacher. But then there was no evidence of poaching. Maybe when they were continuing with the case, they may have discovered that the case of terrorism was a bit easier and there was no need of charging him with poaching. He was, as I said, he was hanged on Monday, 18th February 1957. During the struggle for independence, Jomo Kenyatta tried as much as possible to disassociate himself with Mau Mau. Even during the Kapenguria trial, whenever he would be asked about Mau Mau, he disowned that group. After Jomo Kenyatta becoming the president for over 15 years, Moi becoming the president for a quarter of a century, it is actually Kibaki who gave Mau Mau the recognition they deserved. During Kanu time, Mau Mau was being treated Mau Mau was being treated as a terrorist organization. It is only during Moi's time, during Kibaki's time, that Mau Mau was recognized. That is something that a lot of people have not noticed. Those are a lot of things that a lot of people did not notice. During Moi's time, it is Moi who dominated. I want now to go to the final part of February 18. I've talked of February 18 being the day that Dedan Kimathi was killed, and then the Mau Mau ended that way. But when Moi became the president, towards the end of his days, there was something. There was even an organization which called itself FERA. There is an organization that came to be called FERA, and FERA was an organization whose names were February 18 Revolutionary Army. I'll come to that. There is a lot of coincidences there, and that is how a lot of things are given a lot of things when they happen coincidentally. During the time when Moi was the president, news was only about Moi. News was about Moi, and every time the only station then was VOK, which later became KBC. It would spend a lot of time talking about Moi, about the first quarter of the topic. And every time Moi used to go to church. Every day you'd find he has something to do, whatever. I think that is why I'm also not comfortable with the Ruto. Uh, he likes being in the news. He doesn't. You see, Jomo Kenyatta's time, I was there. Kenyatta died when I was in Form 3, August. During Kenyatta's time, he rarely was heard on radio. It was so much that when you are passing somewhere, because TVs were rare, if you're passing somewhere and you heard Jomo Kenyatta talking on radio, you knew that it was a very important thing. And you'd even enter somebody's house and say, I want just to listen to what Mzee is saying. But Moi, it was everything. Then it reached somewhere, the year 1994. Moi disappeared from the news. He spent a few days, a few weeks, not being heard in the news. You see, this is somebody, Moi, who was being heard daily, daily, daily. Then he spends 2 or 3 weeks without being heard. Some people say that he had a throat cancer and he had gone to Germany for operation. Well, he, what we know is that he spent a few weeks without being seen or heard. Then somebody from my village, you see, hapana onea mi wivu bwana. Ikisema hivyo sasa tutasema, tena amesema he knows somebody. If you come from Webuye, me I come from a place called Lwandeti or Kabrengu. There's a place in Kabrengu, there's a place in Lwandeti called Mayoyo, just a kilometer from the Uganda road towards Lugari station. A young man about my age, somehow, we don't know how, but somehow went and entered the state. I mean, pushed for things and he pushed for things and pushed for things until he was given permission to see the president. And he went and talked to the president. When he went to talk to the president, he told the president that the president had been bewitched. And he even told the president some things which the president allegedly was thinking, and even those close to him did not know. And he was looking at the president pointedly and saying, didn't this and this happen, whatever, 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 and you have not told anybody? He said, yes. Said, I'm a preacher. I'm a preacher. I'll pray for you. You'll not die. Things like that and whatever. And anybody around Webuye or Kakamega County who was there in 1994 will tell you about this fellow from Lwandeti who used to be given permission by, he was a witch buster. He was a witch buster. He would go to people's places, get you. If you have something like juju, you walk and ever. And even the provincial commissioner, Western Province, was afraid of him because he had access to the president. That one happened around that time. So he says that he told Moi that what had happened was if you have been to Panpepa, Webuye, and as you leave the river towards Webuye town, there is, of course, a hill because you know it's a river. And then there is a corner there. The young man said that somebody had slaughtered a dog and placed it strategically for Moi's vehicle to step on it. And after stepping on it, Moi lost his voice, and that is why he was out of news for quite some time, and maybe even went for an operation in Germany. So it happened around that time. Then coincidentally around that time also, it just happened that there was, those days we used to have countries, neighboring countries, hiring and training guerrillas to overthrow the government. So Museveni started an organization that was called FERA, February 18 Revolution Army. The political side of it was headed by Patrick Wangamati. Patrick Wangamati one time was the chairman of Webuye Town Council before Webuye became a municipality. He was the father of Wangamati, the second Bungoma governor. And I think there's a time when even a political party nominated Patrick Wangamati to be a member of the parliament. The other person was who was looking at the military wing. You know, those days every group had, just like NRM, National Resistance Movement, ya Museveni, it also had National Resistance Army. So National Resistance Movement was headed by Professor Lule, but the National Resistance Army was headed by Museveni. And on this, Patrick Wangamati was the head of the FERA political wing, and Brigadier John Odongo was the head of the military wing. When those things came, you know, country, I can tell you, don't be, I'm old, but what I've seen, if you disagree with your country, don't go to the neighboring country. Utaona ya Ochuka. Ochuka, it reached a time when Ochuka was brought back to Kenya and he didn't know what happened. These two countries can agree and they exchange in prisoners. But if you are in far off countries like Scandinavia or anything, you can stay there and get old and die and be buried there. So viewers, my dear viewers, that is the story about February 18, today. February 18, the day that Dedan Kimathi was hanged in Kamiti. February 18, the day that Moi stepped on a dead dog which had been bewitched him. And February 18, Revolution Army, an organization that Museveni was using to try and overthrow those languages they used to use at a popularly elected government of Kenya, KANU. It was not popularly elected, but anyway, that is the language that was being used those days. With that, the mathematician, who was the second Kenyan mathematician to turn into a history teacher, has completed today's lesson. Your bundles may have gone, but the lessons will stay forever. Thank you, and God bless you. God bless Kenya.